James Fulcher, Capitalism, A Very Short Introduction. In Capitalism, A Very Short Introduction, James Fulcher presents a comprehensive examination of the history, principles, and impact of capitalism throughout the world. The book dives into the different aspects and characteristics that constitute capitalism, such as the investment of capital, wage labor, and the importance of markets. As it traces the evolution of capitalism from its origins in medieval Europe to its numerous contemporary forms, Fulcher highlights the various societal influences, technological advancements, and political ideologies that have shaped its development. This summary will take you through the key ideas and themes discussed in the book, offering an insightful and thought-provoking analysis of the multifaceted nature of capitalism and its role in today's global society.
Unraveling capitalism's core principles. Capitalism, the prevailing economic system in the world, is characterized by the investment of money to generate profit, known as capital. Capitalists, those who invest money, can come in various forms, such as homeowners investing in their property. Another core feature of capitalism is its reliance on wage labor, which is essential for both the production and consumption of goods and services. Wage laborers receive wages from employers, and their need to purchase goods and services drives the demand that sustains other laborers' jobs. This interdependency lies at the heart of the capitalist production-consumption relationship. All these interactions take place within capitalist markets, where competition drives capitalists to maximize profits through various strategies, including cost reduction and innovation. This competitive environment leads to advancements in technology, but also challenges for workers. Capitalism centers around the fundamental concept of investing money to make money. This invested money is referred to as capital. Homeowners, for example, can become capitalists by selling their homes, renting them, or using them as collateral for mortgages. Central to the capitalist system is wage labor, which is necessary for producing goods and services. Laborers receive wages from employers for their work and use those wages to purchase goods and services they cannot produce themselves. This interdependence between production and consumption fuels the capitalist cycle by creating demand for more goods and services, ultimately providing jobs for more wage laborers. Capitalist markets form the stage where production, consumption, and competition play out. Contrary to pre-capitalist times, where most people only consumed what they produced, today's capitalist markets offer a vast array of goods and services as long as there is demand. Markets, whether traditional or digital, facilitate the buying and selling of goods between capitalists and consumers. Competition is a crucial aspect of capitalism, as capitalists aim to maximize profits. Competing capitalists may opt for various strategies, like lowering wages or innovating to replace human labor with machines. While the resulting advancements can benefit society, these practices can simultaneously pose challenges for the workforce. Seeds of European capitalism. Capitalism, with 19th-century England as its birthplace, can trace its roots to medieval Europe. The lack of an all-encompassing elite power generated the ideal environment for its emergence. European feudalism encouraged advancements in markets and wage labor, fostering transitions to capitalist systems. Simultaneously, Europe's multi-state composition provided entrepreneurs with flexible opportunities, which became pivotal when refugees escaping the Counter-Reformation introduced financial innovations that laid the groundwork for capitalist growth. Ultimately, these conditions culminated, allowing for capitalism to thrive by the 19th century. Medieval Europe's political fragmentation, with its feudal system and multi-state structure, served as a breeding ground for capitalism. Distinct from rigid slave-based societies or self-sustaining peasantries, European feudalism granted economic producers a degree of flexibility and freedom, while still requiring surplus provisions to their feudal lords. This allowed for smooth transitions to capitalism, as surpluses were eventually replaced by monetary payments, giving rise to wage laborers. Europe's multi-state structure enabled entrepreneurs to traverse jurisdictions, seeking out optimum regions for flourishing enterprises. This fluidity proved essential when refugees fleeing the Counter-Reformation brought financial innovations to England from countries like Belgium and France. Among these innovations was a risk-spreading method that laid the foundation for the modern corporation, first developed by merchants in 16th-century Antwerp. It was the convergence of these factors that laid the groundwork for capitalism in 19th-century England. Widespread wage labor and competitive markets emerged from the burgeoning growth of large enterprises in sectors such as coal mining and the small-scale production of clothing and household goods. These conditions provided fertile ground for the development of capitalism, rooted in the cultural and economic milieu of medieval Europe. Taming anarchic capitalism. The Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th centuries paved the way for breakthroughs in technology, transport, and electricity, creating an anarchic form of capitalism in England. Rapid expansion made it difficult for state regulators and organized labor to keep up, allowing capitalists to prosper with minimal interference. However, this environment led to social upheaval and the growth of radical labor movements, eventually resulting in the state stepping in to regulate markets and protect workers' rights. Managed capitalism marked the foundation of the modern welfare state, improving living conditions for millions but eventually changing course in the 1980s. Within the Industrial Revolution, industrial capitalism emerged as a driving force, particularly in England. This form of capitalism was initially anarchic, with production and consumption ballooning to such an extent that state regulators struggled to manage markets while organized labor scrambled to assert their rights against capitalist overseers. In this climate, the capitalist class reveled in the absence of regulation, as it enabled them to expand their ventures and generate higher profits with scarce governmental meddling. This mindset coincided with the growing acceptance of liberalism, a philosophy that values the freedom of individuals and markets as critical to human liberty. Amidst this tumultuous landscape, the swift construction of cities, factories, roads, and railways ensued. However, the very absence of state intervention ironically led to more significant disruptions than capitalists had anticipated. The unchecked market forces responsible for keeping wages low and prices high inflicted inhumane living conditions on wage laborers, fueling civil unrest in the form of riots, strikes, and machine breaking. These incidents disrupted capitalist production, eventually prompting radical labor movements to become more organized and challenge the unchecked, anarchic capitalism. By the mid-19th century, state intervention began transforming anarchic capitalism into a more managed form as market regulations were implemented to restore order. A heightened awareness of class consciousness emerged, manifested through mass workers' parties, balanced relations between employers and unions, and increased state involvement in the economy. In 1867, voting rights were extended to all men, empowering laborers to exert greater control over their lives and work. Integral to the birth of managed capitalism was the establishment of the modern welfare state. Social policies that now constitute the status quo in Britain, such as free healthcare and secondary education, were legally introduced in the 1940s, prior to which the market dictated the pricing of these services. While the market retained a crucial role, state-managed capitalism successfully curbed the dehumanizing effects of its anarchic predecessor, thereby enhancing living conditions for millions. However, this dynamic would undergo a significant shift in the 1980s. The shift to neoliberal capitalism. The demise of state-managed capitalism in the 1970s was mainly due to the rapid increase of global competition and the shift in public opinion towards individual rights. These factors came together to create a perfect storm that led to the rise of neoliberal capitalism, starting with the election of Margaret Thatcher in Britain. Her reforms dismantled managed capitalism, privatized industries, and reduced union influence. Though neoliberalism brought increased consumer choice and individual freedom, it also made people's lives less secure, resulting in issues like low job security and surging rental costs. In the 1970s, state-managed capitalism encountered significant challenges, primarily due to the fierce international competition brought about by the growth of free trade. In efforts to stay competitive, enterprises started to cut costs by lowering wages, outsourcing production to countries with cheaper labor, and replacing workers with more productive machines. This development took a toll on employer-union relations, and governments struggled to resolve industrial disputes and regulate globalizing markets. As governments failed to address these issues, public support waned, leading to electoral losses. Governments then decided to embrace international market forces rather than resist them. Compounding the demise of managed capitalism was a shift in public sentiment towards individual rights, supplanting concern for social welfare and equality. The top priorities of the time included lower taxation and prices instead of low unemployment rates. These factors culminated in a perfect storm that state-managed capitalism couldn't weather. Margaret Thatcher's election in 1979 marked the beginning of a new era of neoliberal capitalism. Her government dismantled managed capitalism, no longer seeking input from unions or employers on political policy and substantially suppressing union organization. Defiant unions faced severe penalties, including asset seizure. To introduce market forces, Thatcher privatized national industries. This move resulted in around two-thirds of British state-owned companies transitioning to private ownership by 1992. The impact of Thatcher's neoliberalism was so profound that even the British Labour Party began to adopt it as their central philosophy. For instance, Tony Blair's Labour government in the 1990s and 2000s continued remarketization efforts by incorporating private financing for hospital construction and transforming hospitals into corporate-like foundations. While neoliberal capitalism has allowed for increased consumer choice and individual freedom, it has simultaneously compromised public services, leading to more significant uncertainties in people's lives. Laborers grapple with job security, and the influx of public housing into the private sector leaves rental costs vulnerable to harsh market forces. The global march of neoliberalism. The rise of neoliberalism swept not only the UK, but also countries like Sweden and the US. As the guiding force of capitalism changed, all three nations experienced broad shifts in their economic landscape. Sweden, previously an exemplar of welfare-focused managed capitalism, opted for remarketization under its social democratic leadership. The US, always valuing individualism, saw a rise in income inequality and the offshoring of major industries. These transformations and the deregulation of the financial sector ultimately set the stage for the worldwide economic crisis of 2007. Margaret Thatcher's UK wasn't the only country to embrace neoliberalism in the latter half of the 20th century. Sweden, long governed by the Swedish Social Democratic Party, faced the rise of individualism and international competition, leading to increased industrial conflict and waning egalitarian ideals. The time had come for Sweden, too, to transition to a more market-oriented approach. Remarkably, the push for change came from the Social Democrats themselves. Ever the paragon of a well-managed capitalist system, Sweden weathered the storm, continuing to rank among the most egalitarian countries. Despite seeing the steepest growth in inequality among OECD countries in recent years, Sweden remains a leading spender on education and healthcare. Across the Atlantic, the United States was no stranger to valuing individualism, from its founding principles to the widely idealized American dream. However, the U.S. also experienced a form of managed capitalism during the post-Great Depression era, especially under Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal. This period saw the establishment of the National Labor Relations Board, empowering unions and facilitating cooperation between laborers and employers. The rising tide of neoliberalism, however, eventually reached America's shores. Starting with Ronald Reagan's administration in the 1980s, the country witnessed sweeping tax cuts and deregulation or privatization of industries such as air travel, railways, and telecommunications. The aftermath was stark. By the end of the 1980s, income inequality had surged to levels not observed since the 1920s. In a bid to stay competitive, U.S. manufacturing increasingly outsourced to more affordable markets like Mexico. The most consequential result of this shift came from the deregulation of the American financial sector, a move that would have profound implications on the global economy. This laid the foundation for the worldwide economic crisis that began in 2007, shaping the modern capitalist landscape and affirming the reach of neoliberal influence in countries both near and far. Unraveling the financial crisis. The 2007 to 2008 global financial crisis was precipitated by multiple factors including a shift in capital investment, a buildup of debt, and a lack of government oversight due to market deregulation. Financial institutions adopted high-risk strategies, like investing in futures and subprime mortgages. When housing prices fell, this led to massive losses and the eventual collapse of large institutions like Lehman Brothers. Capitalism underwent a metamorphosis as powerful economies like the UK and the US embraced remarketization. International competition soared, and deregulation took center stage. These conditions laid the groundwork for the 2007 to 2008 financial crisis and the Great Recession that followed. The financialization of capital equated to a departure from the traditional production of goods and services, with investment now focused on high-risk, high-profit financial contracts on the stock market. Futures, for example, are agreements to purchase shares or commodities at their current price but at a predetermined point in the future. Investors profit when the price rises during that period, but they can also suffer losses. These speculative financial contracts are emblematic of what Susan Strange dubs casino capitalism. Financial deregulation since the 1980s has allowed such contracts to be bought and sold globally with limited government supervision. This shift towards financialization led to another crucial factor in the crisis: swelling levels of debt. The American subprime mortgage crisis exemplified this issue. Easy credit and speculative financial instruments gave rise to disaster. With the burst of the mid-2000s housing bubble, previously safe investments in housing turned sour. Mortgage brokers, encouraged by the promise of significant commissions and bonuses from major banks, began to issue loans to low-credit borrowers. These subprime mortgages were issued without evidence of repayment capabilities. Banks purchased these subprime mortgages and bundled them into financial instruments sold to larger financial entities. However, once housing prices plummeted, mortgage repayments halted, and the entire system crumbled. Massive institutions like Lehman Brothers had borrowed funds from abroad to capitalize on the housing boom, taking on debt that far exceeded their assets. On September 15, 2008, Lehman Brothers could no longer pay its debts. The subsequent bankruptcy filing set off a domino effect worldwide, contributing to the already tenuous state of the global economy. Reimagining capitalism's future. The Great Recession, sparked by the collapse of Lehman Brothers, shook the world, and yet, surprisingly, few lessons were learned from it. The response to the crisis, implementing low interest rates, helped ease the economic burden on Western countries but inadvertently increased debt-to-GDP ratios in developing nations like China, Brazil, and Turkey. This situation could cause another crisis similar to the subprime mortgage disaster. Capitalism remains unreformed and crisis-prone by nature, with capitalists always seeking new ways to profit. Given the destabilizing effect of capitalism's incessant thirst for growth, which directly contributes to climate change, overhauling capitalism is now an existential matter for humanity. As industries resist reforms due to fears of reduced short-term profits, and with politically viable alternatives to capitalism scarce, our hope lies in leveraging the system's inherent dynamism to mitigate its destructive inclinations. A possible solution entails moving away from the neoliberal capitalism prevalent in the West and adopting state-managed models like the ones employed in less afflicted regions such as Southern and Southeastern Asia.
James Fulcher's Capitalism, a very short introduction, offers a thorough and compelling overview of capitalism, its evolution, and its impact on the modern world. The book demonstrates how capitalism has transformed over the years, reflecting various historical events, socio-political factors, and marketplace conditions. From the rise of state-managed capitalism in the mid-19th century to the more recent emergence of neoliberalism, Fulcher provides a nuanced understanding of the diverse forms capitalism can take. The 2007 to 2008 global financial crisis serves as a powerful reminder of the inherent vulnerabilities and potential consequences of capitalism and poses thought-provoking questions about the future of the system. Throughout the book, Fulcher highlights the dynamic nature of capitalism, suggesting that its adaptability may play a crucial role in addressing the challenges it currently faces.